This is the 21st season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk about bass fishing. Coming off of an interesting show yesterday, we had breaking news. We had some philanthropic, some nonprofit news with the St. Jude. If you guys, there's still a few slots open for that Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic in Wabasha, Minnesota, first week of May. Typically, really good time. You can smallmouth fish, you can largemouth fish. You might be able to catch a fish on a frog. You might be able to catch a fish on a bed. You can catch a pre-spawn on a jerkbait. So if you guys are looking for a really great tournament that has raised over $7 million for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital since its inception, over $800,000 in 2024. Check that out. Link is in the description for that show yesterday. Also had some breaking news about a DQ for a no information rule. Matt Herron, who then after the show peeled the elite stickers off. And it reminded me of, I think it was Randy Haynes at Kentucky Lake when he got into it and he just put his trolling motor up and he said, "I'm taking it to the house." And I think Matt Herron took it to the house and then he's taken his business to the NPFL. So he posted a little video about that. But I think one of the things that I didn't think about this year was typically this time of the year, the Elite Series guys are $12,000 to $18,000 in on deposits like ahead of the tournaments that they fish. So if you remember last year, Bass came out with the no entry fee, then they formed the Bass Council, and then they came back with a $10,000, basically $1,000 for each tournament, readjusted the payouts. But as a result, without a $35,000 to $40,000 entry fee, they don't have to pay the deposits for. So for Matt to say, you know what, I'm going to step away from the Elite Series in 2025, focus on the MPFL, that would have, he would have been in like $10,000 to $15,000, but because of that, without the deposits, makes it a lot easier to walk away. You're not leaving that money on the table. So I'll reach out to Matt. I have known Matt for a long time, always respected Matt, but also I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes there. So I'll offer him the platform on BTL when that time is right to come and talk about his decision. And until then, we'll move ahead to the second Elite Series stop on the 2025 schedule. They're kicking off on Okeechobee this week on Thursday, and ideal weather conditions. Ideal. We're talking like upper 70s, light winds, sunny, stable. They had a good day in the Toyota a couple weeks ago. A lot of mid 20s, high 20s bags that came in. So it'll be interesting to see if that 100-pound mark is reached. But it's also Florida. So we've seen a trend, and I talked a little bit about this in the Open Pros Pick'em show that Andrew Upshaw, Castledine-ish, and myself filmed last night over on Andrew's channel. We actually filmed it at like midnight. It was a total debacle. But if you're interested in that, you can watch it. But someone who's been around Florida, I bet our guest today enjoys driving and riding around Lake Okeechobee. It would have to be more than anything because you can really test a performance bass boat on Lake Okeechobee. That's none other than Rick Pierce. What's up, Rick?
How you doing this morning, man?
I'm good. Like, is Lake Okeechobee the scariest place to run or the most fun to run? Because I mean, you've got pig trails and all sorts of cool stuff you can do with a bass boat on Lake Okeechobee.
The trails, when you get in those boat lanes, it's kind of wicked, because you don't want to be meeting one in a 6-foot wide grass lane. But that's probably the weirdest thing at Okeechobee is running grass lanes. It's kind of weird to run across a flat where you don't have to worry about hitting something and there's nothing but grass under you too. But they've kind of taken care of that grass now. It's just
so when we were there for the Open last year, I remember I was trying to get into Moonshine Bay. And I started going down that trail, and then like a boat came and we ended up passing, and I got about halfway there and I just went, you know what? I don't think Moonshine Bay's for me. I turned around and got back. Like, I mean, I think what's your option there, Rick? Like, you're on pad, you're trimmed out, you're going 65 miles an hour. There's just a couple of places that you can shut down on that. Like, you just full send it into the reeds if you meet someone head on and hope that you both veer right and understand, I guess, the rules of the road.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. You just kind of got to both spin out in the reeds, and the reeds aren't a big deal. You can cut through the tules there. A little different if you're in the pads, but you can cut through the tules pretty good. So,
have you ever sent it into the reeds out of a pig trail or out of an airboat trail in Florida on pad?
I prefer not to comment on a live podcast.
Dude, I think you've been around long enough. You can tell whatever story you want. You're golden.
Yeah, we've all done something like that. Usually it was meeting another boat in the middle of it. Funniest thing, we got one of those shallow ones one time, and I wasn't having a really good day years and years ago. It's probably 35 years ago, and running shallows, and it was kind of just plugging through there. And when I got out into the canal, I had a 2-pounder laying on my back deck.
Jumped out of the reeds into the boat.
Jumped out in the boat.
Oh, that's cool. I've never heard of that while you were on pad, though. I mean, the odds of that.
About 35 mile an hour through the cut, and all of a sudden there he was.
I got you. So I saw you at Sam Rayburn. Boy, that was already almost 2 weeks ago for the Bassmaster Open. You're fishing all of Division II.
Right.
Well, I mean, one of them's in your backyard. We got Kentucky Lake coming up, and then a couple weeks later, I applaud Bass for going to new destinations. We added Leech last year. We went to Ouachita, which was another lake in Arkansas that I thought was fantastic. There's definitely a different vibe when we go to a fishery that not everybody has been to, where there's not a lot of history on it. With Bass's kind of hybrid no information rules that started in January. It's going to be a brand new fishery for a lot of us, but I mean, I would imagine that's a place you're pretty familiar with and looking forward to showing off that fishery to the world in early April and to a bunch of the open guys.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with it today as I was as a youngster. I know tribally history going back to when I was preteens, and I've ridden a lot of that ground on a motorcycle that's covered with water now when it's low water, So we've been all over the lake, know the lake backwards, inside out, know where one stump lays on a flat, that kind of stuff. But it's not something I'm in tune with day to day now because I spend too much time in other places. But I am really anxious to see it show off, man. I think, when the elites came here a few years ago, it turned out to be a pretty good event with doing 2 days on Norfolk, 2 days on Bull. And They were really resenting, just didn't really want to go to Norfolk. And once they got over there, it was like, oh, wow, this is a pretty good little pond,
Was that Norfolk Bull Shoals wait, this would be funny if it came full circle. Was that the Randall Tharp, Matt Herron deal on Bull Shoals where they pulled it?
Matt Herron in the back of Bennett's Bayou on a bluff, throwing swim jig and swim bait, and both of them getting in the same area by accident at different times. That is the largest community hole on the lake now.
Really? And then Tharp pulled ahead because he thought Herron was on his stretch, and Herron was pissed because he thought Tharp had cut him off, and then Herron caught a 5-pounder, and then he said, that just happened. How about that? And then he tossed it in the box, and then they all made up good. But, a lot of Matt Herron news going on now, and I just had Randall Tharp on the show for the first time this Monday. Yeah. Dude, he's an awesome guest.
Randall, I didn't really know Randall back in the FLW days, and I met him in an elevator at the Classic, and really didn't know Randall because FLW and Bass were just very diverse for us. Non-diverse for us. We didn't really do anything or follow FLW much at all. I mean, it goes back to us helping Andy Morgan out when he changed the sponsorship one time, and I said, Andy, I love you to death, buddy. You're a friend, but FLW is just not going to dress much for us. And so but Randall, I didn't know him much. I really like Randall. He is really a good guy. I really pulled for him last year. I want him to make it. I hope he makes it this year. I think if he could have made the cut coming over when the whole split up of Bass and BPT happened, I think that was really a time for him in that 2018 section, 17-18 deal. Could have really made his career, and he's good enough to be there just like some of the others. I think that a couple of them, Bohannon and a few more that were good anglers, took it on the chin during that deal. And so some of the guys made out. You look at a couple of them like Clark and certainly Scott and all of them that did make it over there. That worked out for some of them, Canterbury. But they didn't all have that opportunity, and it would have been nice to see that a little more diverse in their selection. But from our standpoint at FLW at the time, I didn't know Randall. But, Matt Herron, I've known Matt forever. I literally forever. Matt started his career with us.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he ran a Sabre with a 150 on it in the old days.
What? What? We're talking early 90s or?
Yeah, 90s, 80s, and 90s, I guess. It would have been 91, 92, 89. I mean, years ago.
Was he grumpy back then, or was that something that kind of has developed?
Matt Herron.
That's what I'm saying. That's like kind of his personality is no BS, no nonsense.
Yeah, he and his dad were just old body shop guys. They were hammers and bending tin and Bondo and paint, and they were body shop guys and good people, good angler out of Alabama. And of course, Josh grew up in the business with him, and Josh has moved on to do other things, swim baits and all that. Worked with Andre on his deal for a while, and I don't know if he and Andre still work together or not, but
I was just thinking that, Rick, I need to try to find Andre Moore and get him on the show. Like I reached out to a couple different, I don't want to say, cause I don't want to give ideas to anyone. I'll tell you off air, who I've sent some emails and messages to where you're just like, oh, that would be interesting. And Andre was on my list.
Yeah. I met Andre when he was out west, of course, and now he's married to Kim Baines. And, Kim kind of came into the business with that whole Bass ESPN thing at a stronger level. She was here before coming in, but that Bass and ESPN thing kind of drug her in on it. And she joined that crowd and was a commentator on that. And, that, of course, they've hooked up and they're good. They seem to be good people. Everything about Andre I've known has been good. So they'd be a good one to have.
But just real quick, let's just wrap up the Matt Herron deal. He made a little post about it. Bass had their press release about no information rules violation. Josh said his piece on the message boards. I feel like everyone knows a little bit about it. No one actually knows everything about it. I'm fine with that. There's some things that go on behind closed doors. Everyone makes their decision. You have to live with it and move on. But I mean, dude, you've been doing this a long time. This isn't going to be the first or the last time that someone has packed it up mid-season, chosen to do something different. There's been a ruling by an organization. Just kind of overall thoughts, how does Matt come out of this looking in the best positive light, and then how does Bass move forward with this in the best positive light? So even though there is a divorce between Matt, who was a staunch supporter of Bass during the split, and Bass, who's trying to uphold the rules, they both come out of this looking the best.
It's going to be an interesting show today. You've got a list of things you want to go into, and Fanger, you said. Yeah, don't talk about it now. Save it for the show. I don't want to know. And that's honestly for all the fan base. Matt doesn't want to know. He wants these to be fluid and go through and do the right thing. And he doesn't want to know what you're going to talk about.
I did. And it's hard cutting you off.
Yeah. He just wants to roll with it. But anyway, that's good for the fans to know anyway. But, going into where they're going into Okeechobee, that probably would have been a good event for him normally. But I know Okeechobee's tough right now. You talked about it being a prime time, last year you'll recall, and I know I saw you in that area. I went in there for just a few minutes, actually for less than an hour, and everybody knew those fish were there, but golly, you counted 100 and some boats in that one area at one time of our field. And I came in late and it was happening and I stayed out of it. I did find an area with more grass than you could ever cover. I'll try to find that picture. I did send that GPS waypoint to somebody that does live at Okeechobee, and that grass is dead as a hammer now. And so they've killed it all, and it's going to be a tough event. I think Matt had some tough decisions to make coming in. I thought there were a little more money in, though, right now. I don't know, how much money are they in now on the Elites?
I think they're only like $5,000. I think they do 2 payments of $5,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They were in like 10 grand, right?
I think it's total for 10 grand. That's what the angler board came back. I'm not exactly sure how, but I did talk to someone else who said that they had not paid any deposits yet.
Oh, okay. So they're not cash in yet.
Correct.
Okay. Well, if they're not cash in yet, then Matt's made a decision that's probably a good emotional time to make it. I hate it for Matt. Knowing Matt, I've ate supper with Matt a couple of times after our sponsorship. We're friends. I can't see Matt Herron ever violating a rule. We're going to probably go into that, as you know, the rule thing. I hate it for Matt at this time. I think it's just a bad time to make a shift like that. But it would have been good for him to see this particular season out and then make that shift. But I'm sure that the forces that came upon him made him make an emotional decision that I hope it works out for him. And, of course, you know, NPFL has reached out to a lot of those older anglers, and they've got a good audience base right now that's trying to come in. And, you know, whether or not or how they grow is all up in the audience's hands. It's up in the hands of the, you know, what they have for sponsorship. But Matt's made that decision, and he'll roll with it, and him and several others will.
It will. I think the MPFL is interesting. What are your thoughts on that moving forward? A lot of a handful of bigger names that are fishing, you know, both Matt was one of them fishing both the Elite Series or over on MLF, also jumping into that NPFL. Is it, in your opinion, and like I said, you've seen a lot of organizations come and go and tournament trails over the years and
over and over and over
and in all parts of the country from West Coast to East Coast. It seems to me, even though they've had their bumps, even recent bumps, that the MPFL is becoming a viable option, a third option.
Well, I think from an angler perspective, it's a really good option, and I think they've got a good core group of anglers. I think they've done a good job. One of the gentlemen you're familiar with, I'm familiar, came in here. He said, "I think Brad's going to go non-forward facing sonar," and he was just all distraught about it. And I'm going to leave that name out, but anyway, he said, "Man, it just, what do you think?" I said, "I think it gives them viability." I said, "It gives them a platform. It gives them something to go with. And I think it gives them a future to grow anglers." I don't know what it does on the media side. Their PHX, whatever that fix program they were with, their views were not strong. So maybe it gets them some views. I know that Brad and the guys behind it, the major investor, they're supporting the other major investor, supporting it on the media side. So if they can grow that media, then maybe I think they've got a tough road because, as you know, it's very tough for another organization in this business. There's really not a room, in my opinion, for all of them to do what they're trying to do. But I think we're hitting a point where it's going to change, and we're in the middle of a demographic change that I think we're seeing. And we're not at the bottom of the swell yet, but we're definitely making a turn.
It's interesting. So Brad Fuller and the MPFL, I mean, they're going all in on this. Like it's a full send. He came out with I want to say like a State of the Union or an opinion piece on the website last week, and just the first sentence or first paragraph of it, I thought, Rick, was interesting. He said, "Let's cut through the noise. The professional fishing industry is at a crossroads, and whether we like it or not, the decisions being made today will define the sport for generations to come. Too many people are tiptoeing around hard truths, afraid to upset sponsors, organizations, or the loudest voices in the room. But here at the MPFO, we're not afraid to ruffle some feathers. So let's get to the real state of our sport."
We're going, yeah.
That's it. I mean, you can just your kind of thoughts on that as a whole. Just that statement. Take out any context.
Well, you're segueing here. Are you segueing on me?
I'm potentially. It depends if you're willing to take that turn.
Yeah. So where you're segueing is to go with the data, and what I've told you in the past, and we came and discussed again, is that's where forward-facing sonar comes into this conversation. I am not the proponent for all forward-facing sonar. I think it's a wonderful tool. I think we've got a lot of challenges on the conservation side. When I say that, with the Fish and Wildlife Services, the conservation agencies across the country, I think they've got a really major challenge. We all knew those fish were out there roaming. I can tell you this: we have fished under stripers for years at Norfolk. We just couldn't see them, and so we knew they were out there running shad. I had jig fish sideways on a spoon years ago. That all ended. We did a bad job, and I've said this on a previous BTL. We had plenty of potential to have chased those fish. We didn't know how. And it was there. It was the ability to do it was there, good enough. Not nearly as good as forward facing sonar. We just weren't smart enough. And we were working with Larry Rinkin and a group. They actually brought an engineer over here out of the group out of Raymarine from overseas, and we were working on 10-2 sonar before Raymarine exited the bass side. We were working on 10-2. When I say 10-2, they were close, and they have the licensing, which has been used by others on that shoot a 10-2 beam out. So we were actually, years before forward facing came out, working on that. And Raymarine made a decision to exit the freshwater program again. I'll give Larry Rinkin credit, and I'm sure you probably know Larry.
Name's familiar. I don't think
he
I know
worked
him
for
personally.
Duckett after he left Raymarine.
Oh yeah, no, I know him.
Yeah, Larry's a good guy. He had probably one of the few people that came into this sport, and I asked him what the potential when they were jumping in this sport early on. Of course, a few of our guys went over with us and tried to help them, and they were headed in a good direction. But Larry's one of the few guys that knew exactly how many units he could sell. I mean, just by what we had at that time. I think he understood his market potential. I asked him the number he expected to sell, and he said, I think we can do this. And I feel like his number was probably spot on. Most people, I come in and talk to a JYZ motor company. It's easy to figure out who's new in the sport. How many motors do you think you're going to sell? Well, we're going to sell this many. Dude, that's more than what we sell as a boat companies, So how are you going to sell more motors than we do build boats? It's just not going to happen. I mean, they got some pie in the sky number, and Larry was true on. So those are things that people don't get to sit in those backside rooms, and I don't sit in the backside rooms of any of those companies, but I have sat in some of them. But I mean, it's really like knowing what's going on inside of Chevrolet, or inside of Ford, and they built this great touring car that it's wonderful, but nobody knew it was coming, And so here you go, and forward facing is changing the face of the game from the conservation agencies, from the fishing agencies. I think it's going to develop. I think it's doing something really big, and you're wanting me to head there. I'm going to try to jump in there. We got back just now from a outdoor summit, the Arkansas Outdoor Summit, and the CAS Cruise develops. They've got an AI system now that they can actually generate data faster than anybody. And so Cass has done a good job with that. He's a really sharp young man. He's an Auburn grad, unfortunately. It's T. Kennedy, I'm sorry. But anyway, he's an Auburn grad, unfortunately. But he has to go with that when you get around him. So, but he lives in Northwest Arkansas, and he's really put together a good set of data. And the thing that's unique about that data is it shows that we're seeing in the last, let's say, post-COVID, we're seeing older anglers fall out in Arkansas registrations of licenses. So we're seeing older anglers on a decline. It's not a major decline. It's a minor decline. And I sent you that slide. I did send you the slide during the summit. But post that, we're seeing that slide go the other way on anglers under 25. So both male and female have a growth potential in anglers, since it goes back to COVID, but it's continued after COVID. The older anglers came up during COVID, but after COVID, they kind of went back to normal. Now we're seeing those younger anglers come in, and I'm going to say this, the biggest advantage, I think, and that's why I think we're at the bottom of this swale almost, not quite, but close. I think the youth have stayed in the sport, and we've had 25 years of college fishing, Matt.
Has it been that long already? Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it has. So I got in 2006, 2007, and I think it was 4 or 5 years old. Oh my golly. Yeah, no, you're right, Rick. Okay, move on. Let's not harp on that number. That sounds like a long time.
20 years plus for college and 25 for high school since the Illinois Athletic Association took it on. And as I've told that story, those two men that were they were outdoor riders for St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and they went to work for the Illinois Athletic Association, were instrumental along with Terry Brown and others in bringing that forward in Illinois, and that started all of what we got today. But they were the two that were really the driving force behind because they were employed by the Athletic Association. They were outdoor riders. They loved fishing. And so they'd wanted to do that. Bill, the old gentleman, well, he wanted to do that since the 70s, and he finally got it done. So anyway, you look at this and that growth, and we've had that 25-year, and they've not stayed with us. They haven't bought product. They haven't continued to fish. They've got in, got out. Yeah, there's guys like you. There's guys like Brad at Pure Fishing and good guys. But it's not been Ethan at Shimano. There's people that have stayed in the business, even Cox, but there's not a lot of them. But now what we've got is we've got a whole new generation that's staying, and those license sales are growing in that 25, not just among males, but also among females. So that's good. So I think that's what forward facing has done. Now, how do we manage that going forward? I'm going to let you have a little bit of the floor. I've got an opinion, but I think it's important what MPFL is doing. I think BPT may have a really good metric. They're showing that. Let's see. It'll take time. I think Bass doesn't have the metric yet.
I think we're gonna agree. Like this is I'll use the language that was spoken to me about the staggered takeoff on the one day. We're gonna agree to disagree on this one because I think I've got a little bit different view than you do, Rick. But I think I'm very interested in hearing yours because, like you said, I've kind of truncated your thought process in order to save it for BTL because I want to hear it like kind of as in full. I've got some things. I want you to go first on what your thoughts are on it. You've been doing this a lot longer than I have. You know the ins and outs a lot better than I do, and I think it's only right, particularly with your nomination to the 2025 Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. I think the Hall of Fame nominee should have the floor when it comes to your thoughts on this.
Well, first of all, the Hall of Fame nomination is an honor, a tremendous honor. I appreciate the Hall putting me on that list. I don't think, and it may or may not, but I don't think it goes forward. I mean, it takes a lot of people to put someone in the Hall of Fame, and a lot of good things in the Hall. Committee has its own opinion on that, and I've tried, Matt, to be a steward of sport my whole life. You and I have talked about that from a number of perspectives over the years, but that is a tremendous honor. I don't know that I can say much about that otherwise, but to go along with what your forward-facing thoughts, I'm going to lay this out there. I think forward-facing has brought us the ability to intrigue youth that in the past could not compete with the older clients, the older anglers in this sport. They had to have tribal knowledge to go up against a Matt Herron, a Bill Lowen, a Mark Davis being a key one, a Gary Klein, Paul Elias. They had to have a tribal knowledge. You don't go into a Sam Rayburn or a Kentucky Lake or Gunnersville and go up against George Cochran's knowledge. It's just not going to happen. You're just not going to do that. And now there's a younger set of anglers, younger than those guys, and definitely that younger set of anglers has similar knowledge. It's different, and these lakes are changing, evolving, but that basic background knowledge is there. And so these young kids didn't have a way, and I say kids because they're not kids, they're young men, young women. They didn't have a way to gain that advantage. And what forward-facing gave them is an opportunity to compete today. and you know, I know you're a big FFS guy. I know you and Austin are buddies, and Austin Cranford, and I know the stories, and you know, I no doubt Austin's caught his share of local controversy, but he hasn't sprung out there on the national scene yet. But he's a good angler. And there's a lot of those good anglers, you know, like the Blevins boys, father-son team, Dustin Blevins over here out of Harrison. Dustin wins about everything in North Arkansas, now North Arkansas, South Missouri. Now they've ventured out to Trader Bill's down at Washington Hamilton, and they're kicking tail down there, and Justin's really good at it. And there's a few other young anglers in this area that are good at it, and they're just another Austin Cranford. Now, whether or not they take that leap, I consider them like a Joe Burbeck that nobody knows about. Joe Burbeck won Seminole in 1969. And he was the first angler from Illinois to win an event. And Joe Burbeck, as I asked him why he didn't fish bass in the 90s and late 80s, I was pushing him to fish bass. And finally I called him one day, and he was good friends with my dad. And Joe and I had a kind of a child and mentor relationship to a degree, because he was my dad's guy. And you have those guys that grew up, they're basically my dad's age. They grew up, they stayed together, they roomed together, they did this, did that, you know. So taking that son relationship into it was a little different with Joe and I. And so Joe was one of the best anglers ever out of Illinois. And one day I just said, we were trying to get Joe to go. And I said, Joe, Dad said, why don't you see if Joe wants to go? If he wants to go, that's fine. So I called Joe and I said, Joe, why don't you want to fish bass? He said, Rick, he put it to me very plainly, and this is where a lot of these young FFS guys aren't going to be learned about. He said, I make at the time, and I'm going to use a number, and it was at that time, and this is a long time ago, he was making about $35,000 a year being a lineman.
Mm-hmm.
And he was making about $35,000 a year fishing tournaments. He said, I make about $35,000 a year being a lineman. I make about $35,000 a year fishing tournaments. And I get to sleep in my own bed every night. And he said, I'm just not willing to make the stretch. I have to give up a career, and I probably will give up both incomes. And I'll tell you one that took a long time to learn that, and that's Tommy Biffle. So, because when Tommy came out and he was working at Ford Glass plant, he was making good money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then he turns around, he comes out, and he's making money at home. Him and Sharon were kicking tail on the team trails over there in Oklahoma. I think Tommy won 3 or 4 of our boats. And I mean, at one time, the wealthiest place to fish in the country was Oklahoma, because East Oklahoma, you could fish a tournament every weekend for a boat almost. Probably 29 weekends a year, go fish for a boat.
Yeah, it was wild.
Nowadays, that's different in Oklahoma, but at the time, Tommy was winning a good portion of those. Well, the first year he came out in bass and jumped in the Pro Tour, he's no longer on top of home water. He's no longer got his glass career, and Tommy's struggling to make family ends meet, you know. And so that's why Joe saw that before anybody else. And that's the decision with some of these FFS young men are going to have to make, is whether they go out, and a guy like Dustin Blevins, whether he steps out. There's a few more over here that I've known since they were youth, and they're good anglers, but they may not step out. But they're going to stay in the sport, and there's more of them staying in the sport. You dug it up, didn't you?
No, that's a great point, Rick. So Biffle started, and Bass has done a fairly good job of keeping these older records. It doesn't go back, but yeah. So Biffle starts in mid 80s, coming out of Oklahoma. You just talked about his career before that. So he fishes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 22, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4. So he fishes from 85 all the way through 89 until he finishes 4th on Rayburn and cashes a $20,000 check. In the first of those 5 years, his biggest check on the water in a bass event was was $6,000. Yeah, that's wild.
And that was Mega Bucks, which the entry fee was off the charts at that time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never even thought about that. I mean, that's 5 years where you're just grinding and you're going, man, I could do this in the local. I could fish the team and stuff. Yeah, interesting. Great point there,
Yeah,
Rick.
there were two guys in Oklahoma at that time, and they had one mentor that was a jig pitcher, and Ricky Head will remember his name. I can't. Ricky, I tried to get that, and he had to dig it up the other day. That was about 2 years ago. I asked him about a year and a half ago who it was, and he gave me his name, and I wanted to keep it, but that was Tommy's mentor over there. And there were two guys that he mentored on flipping a jig and pitching a jig over there, and they were Tommy Biffle and Norman Barton Jr. And I know you're in Oklahoma now, and you never heard of Norman Barton Jr., have you?
I've never heard of Norman Barton. Now I know Ricky Head because he makes a killer homemade bladed jig.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, that thing, dong, 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 dong. But yeah, so what was the other name?
Norman Barton Jr.
Enlighten me, Rick.
He's just a good angler in Oklahoma. His brother fishes, he fishes.
Is that Ed Barton's?
Yeah.
That's Ed Barton's brother?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, Ed Barton's like the man.
Well, Norman Barton Jr. was the man. Ed's not. Only there were two Bartons, see? Not the only Barton.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah. Those are times you're not going to be aware of, Matt. That was
no, I mean, I know you don't want to mess like you get anywhere near Kerr and you do not want a Barton in that tournament because you're fishing for second.
Yeah, that's good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, and that's the two that were sticks in that period and coming out of Oklahoma, and and Biffle just never really took that trade. It took him a while to develop those skill sets, and with forward-facing sonar today, you don't have to. Those 5 years don't exist for a Trey McKinney, and Trey can fish either way. He can go flip with Biffle, or he can go fish forward-facing. Take your pick. Now, he had a bad event down there last week, but he'll recover. Trey's fine.
It took Trey 2 tournaments to make $20K.
Yeah.
He fished, it was his second open in 2023. And then he won another $20K. And then he won another $20K. And then he won $100,000. And then he won another $76,000. And that's all in 2.5 years.
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing about people that don't know about Trey, and you do know about Trey, is, before he was 18 years old, he'd won 2 of our boats.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's just a good angler, and he took a week off on one of those and went and won another boat in between those first 2 events,
It's wild, and it's just like, so there's like the start of Biffle, and obviously we're comparing this, like Biffle, Hall of Fame career, legendary, like it, but that's a great point that you bring up about the immediate relevancy of these younger anglers. Because I mean, Biffle here could like turn his neck. The beard, the mustache was wasn't gray. Like, I mean, this is like a young fit Tommy Biffle right here. And then so like look at that on the start, and then look at Trey's start.
Yeah, well, here's
immediate relevancy
that a little bit, and the other one that'll rival that'll be Kevin's career.
Yeah, we'll check that.
So we're digging into the bass stats. It was really something. It took Bass a while to trap these, and those did exist with ESPN. ESPN reformatted all that data. I will give ESPN credit on that. They put everything in. They had all the data.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's trying to be – I hope that Bass continues to gather all that data that ESPN formatted. So there's Kevin's career.
Yeah, I mean,
Kevin and I kind of started at the same season. That Bull Shoals event in '88 was my first event.
And what you also have to understand is a lot of these had, 250, 350 boats in them?
They were all draw head-to-head draw at 330, 300, 330. And
that one right there.
So you had 165 boats competing in the event on head-to-head draw.
Your first Bassmaster event was this one?
Like your first tour event? That's it. Don't go down the list. No. It may not have been that one. It may have been the one that Klein won. But it's close, okay?
Dude, listen to the top 5 on this. Rick, Stacy, Denny, and Guido. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, Mark Billings is a local boy out of Harrison. He was an insurance agent out of Harrison. He's a good angler, still fishes.
That's a hell of a top 5.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back on track here. So this is we got off on a little bit of a wormhole, which I love.
We got off on something.
But you were talking about immediate
age.
relevancy. Immediate relevancy, I believe, was the term that led us down that wormhole.
Yeah, I think that's what forward facing gives these youth, is the ability to compete. Now Trey's got, as I said, an ability to compete no matter what you do. He can go pitch a jig with Andy Morgan. That ain't gonna hurt him, you know. But Trey's got the ability to fish with anybody.
Whoa. You think Trey could compete with Andy Morgan when it comes to pitching a jig?
Why don't you ask Andy?
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I don't think he's as good as Andy, but he's, in the right term, nobody's going to be as good as Andy. Have you know the deal on the choo-choo division out of Chattanooga?
I mean, I know that's a very competitive BFL division.
Yeah, well, that choo-choo division, they created that because those guys on Chattanooga don't fish anywhere but Chattanooga. They don't go to Nickajack hardly even. Yeah. They don't go anywhere else. They just want to fish Chickamauga. So that's all they want to fish. So that's why in the Redman days, they made the choo-choo division. And in Redman days, Andy Morgan won the Angler of the Year there one year before he went pro. And he has 5 first and 1 second.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. That's pretty solid, or 4 first and 1 second, whatever it was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was solid, though. I mean, he finished second.
Everything back in the day.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to find that data. I doubt it goes back that far on Andy. You're digging, though, man.
Yeah.
But I think from a standpoint of forward-facing sonar, I think it is keep the youth involved. And so what you asked a while ago is you're going to hold your opinion, and I'm going to finish mine. I think we need to figure out how to control forward-facing sonar from a regulatory standpoint with rules, because we do have to keep both sides of this sport. We can't have a Matt Herron leaving the sport basically for a lot of other frustrations. And we need to figure out how these youngsters can learn to fish other ways too. I said youngsters, I did not say kids, but I think they should learn. Now there's a push to eliminate FFS in high school, strictly from a competitive standpoint, because not all kids can have it. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm not going to get into that way out, But I definitely, and I spent last night, Winsfield, Missouri, I spent last night at 7 o'clock Zoom call with the Winsfield, Missouri Bass Club that's headed down here with 32 kids to Fish Bull Shoals. So I did a Zoom call with them last night. So that's cool. But they're going to they want some information on bull, and we visited last night. But no, there's no doubt about it that forward-facing has its benefits for youth, and I think that it needs to do something to keep it in the sport. I don't think Bass has the right metric right now, and I don't know what the metric on the opens is, but I think from a standpoint of the elites, I'm going to say it. I told you I'd say it. You said don't say it to me, save it for the show. So here's what I think, Matt. I think we should have 2 days without forward-facing and 2 days with it.
So somewhat similar to like what the Invitationals is doing, 1 day with, 1 day without, and then the final day with it. How do you split that up? How do you determine what 2 days are with and what 2 days are without?
And in my mind, and it's not mine to decide, but it's in my mind, is the 2 first days without it and the next 2 days with it. I realize that will skew the field.
That's bold.
That will skew the field.
So you have to make the top 50 cut without forward-facing sonar, and then the top 50 anglers can have it for the last 2 days. But it allows the veterans to make a living, the guys who are fishing, the power fishing traditionalists, for lack of a better term, and then it forces the technology savvy younger anglers to catch fish without it before then being able to fish their strings.
That's my view.
I'm glad. I'm trying to process that, because that way, that would be very interesting.
Yeah.
How many guys on the Elite Series out of the 100? Well, I think there's 103 now, Rick.
102,
out of the
103. Yeah.
I think there's just 103 now. How many of those guys do you think would go for that? Like if you were to walk into an Elite Series meeting and everyone had to vote yes or vote no discussion, just first 2 days without it, second 2 days with it. How many, what do you think the votes would be right now?
There's a few of the younger anglers would go for it. Not many, as you know, because they were the ones that were in favor of a 50-50 split, one with and one without before among the tournaments when they voted that. So they had that vote where it was one for and one without. There's a few of the young anglers that go for that, but I think it's going to be a very generational split. I think the younger anglers as a whole would want forward facing. There's a few that don't mind either way. And they're going to be that Trey McKinney guy that can go either way. But some of them, and I'm not going to mention names because I have a strong opinion that some that I don't think catch them without it. I don't care what you did. They couldn't catch fish in a bucket.
Okay, let's have a discussion then. Can you blame them for it though? Because a younger angler that came up and let's say started high school fishing in 2017 or 2018 with the Panoptics has built their game around the tools that they have at their disposal, Rick. Just like an angler when Kevin Van Dam came in, built his game around the tools that were at his disposal. Just like when the Flasher came out, David Fritz built his game around the tools that were at his disposal.
Yeah, I've had forward facing ever since it came out myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had, I ran Loran before there was GPS. We worked with Humminbird on the original side imaging. We worked with Humminbird on the Onyx software. I've played with software. Lewis Kimmy sat in my office, and Lewis would tell you this, and this is where touchscreen Lowrances happened because they had Simrad that had touchscreen. Simrad was the company that owned them, and you don't know all those stories. So there's just a whole lot of technology we've been in the middle of, whether you want to talk about spot lock trolling motors and other things. But the thing is, we've always been a favor of technology. That's not the point. We just heard, we talked about Ray Marine on the early part of this and Larry. So this set of technology, I'm not against the technology.
Yeah, it's funny because I have this pulled up, which I know you're not. So this is like the history of Basscat. Lots of words in there, like innovation, pushing the limits, cutting edge. Every time you come on, there's some little deal that we all use today that either you or your dad were the ones that said, let's try this, let's do this. I know you've come on and hinted at futuristic control panels in the future and wild stuff with the boats and cutting edge technology. So it is interesting. It is very interesting that you are all for the advancement, but there's that little bit of old school in there. I've not heard anyone that says, hey, you have to earn your way into the money round without it, and then you can let it eat.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. I realize it's going to have controversy on both sides. There's two edges of controversy. One's going to be the youngsters that are the FFS crowd, and it includes some older guys now. Let's be honest. Nobody can call Wheeler young anymore. I mean, he's in that older.
No, he's a veteran. He's a big time veteran.
Yeah, he's a veteran. So there's going to be guys in that FSS range that's what they want, and they're going to be on the front end saying, "Oh, I can't believe you're taking it out." Then if it goes into the final 2 days, they're going to say, "Oh my gosh, I've got the opportunity." And the old guys are going to say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't compete. I got here flipping a jig. Now I got to do that." And so I'll tell you the similarity of it. And I've been pretty firm on this one. And I'm going to give you a similarity, and that is Alabama rig. I don't believe Alabama rig has any business in tournament fishing. I think it has an excellent recreational use. If you want to go catch a limited fish, go do it, man. I think recreationally, that's fine. But the Alabama rig, if you take certain lakes, certain time of the year, I think it takes away the natural ability, whether it's FFS or whether it's cranking a rock ledge, okay? You can't focus on that if the Alabama rig's in play certain times of the year. Because if you don't pick an Alabama rig up, there's a good chance certain times of year you're going to get beat by it. So you cannot do what traditionally or historically or even could be the best pattern today and focus on it, because in the back of your mind, back here, you're thinking, oh my God, they're throwing an Alabama rig and kicking my tail today. So you really can't focus on it. And it's such a strong platform at times that you cannot focus on other platforms. And so, you know, I certainly have had my good and bad tournaments over the years, but I would hate to think at Bass I had to compete with an Alabama rig every day we go. Now, you know, you take a Lake Martin. We all went to Lake Martin. You were there.
Yeah.
What if it'd been an Alabama rig tournament?
I still feel like I would have caught 9 pounds, Rick.
But maybe a lot more would have caught 9 pounds. Maybe one guy caught 2 6s, you see?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Lincoln brings up, I think he's playing devil's advocate here. He goes, and what about a red trap? Should we ban them like those days, you know, when you use Rayburn, for example? We were just there. I mean, dude, like, you know.
We're going to get those opinions. Let's kill Carolina rigs in the spring. Let's get rid of Gitsits in the spawn. You know, no more swim baits in the fall. You know, those are all the arguments you're going to get, but those are not the same argument, you know. So here's how I'd like to counter, and I don't want to counter in a argumentative type of way, but more so in it'll lead to posing a question. And I've touched on this primarily on some other podcasts that I've done. I haven't really dove into it on BTL. There's definitely forward-facing fatigue, but I also think that there's beneficial, educational discussions that you can have about it that leave emotion out of it and actually help people understand it. Fair statement, Rick? Yeah.
This came out in, you know, was field tested 2015, 2016. They've got it on a couple of guys' boats. You've got the blobs with the Panoptics. Organization Bass and FLW at the time kind of knew what was going on, didn't understand the power of it. You had 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and kind of towards the end of that 22, 23 season is when it blew up. I'd say the majority of the guys had these on their vessels around that 2020 to 2021 season. I was with the Bass Tank.
They were pretty well known by 2020.
Yep. I was with the Bass Tank with the crappie, and it was big. I had it put on in 2019. I remember going to that Toyota Championship, and I was actively looking before takeoff to see how many people had the LVS 32 transducer on, and it seemed about 15% of the field had it in 2019. By 2022, I'd say 85, 90% of the field had it. Now 100%.
I'll tell you a good one, Matt. This is a really good one. Okay, so I went west, and I was watching that same transition you're watching at a One Bass Open at the time what was Wild West, and it was a little slower, but it was kind of like one year to the next they were all over. You know.
Yep. Yeah. So you talk about you know, you just came back from this symposium. We were talking about, you know, we parked next to each other at the meeting, and I've used this as example in BTLs this week, or where you said, look around, what do you notice? And I was like, you know, everyone's 12. And you were like, yeah, that's great for the sport. Like, this is what we've been trying to do, is get younger generations in fishing. So I would like your answer to this. So you had all of these years. You had 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 for either of these organizations to understand what was happening with their anglers in the boats. They had cameras in them. They have relationships with these anglers to make a decision to say, hey, this is new and innovative technology. Let's understand what is going on in here and see what is best for the organization, to be proactive rather than reactive. But because they are reactive now, you have an entire generation of anglers that have built their game, their skill, their craftsmanship around the tools that they have at their disposal. So if I looked at the Elite Series right now, and I go through the list, I'd say roughly 35 to 40% of those anglers that have come onto the, Elite Series, there's been a lot of turnover over the past. There's only like 4 or 5 original Elite Series guys. Bill Lowen just won. John Cruz has won on the St. Johns River there before. But you're basically changing the entire game for half of your field that qualified with a skill set that is now no longer relevant, which to me doesn't seem right.
I understand that point.
So how do you fix
there's
that?
No good answer on that, but I'll tell you something. This is our nuclear bomb at this point. Okay, it's a different way to view it, and that's a rather drastic statement. This is our nuclear bomb before we dropped it, and so the thing is nobody understood it, and it took it a while to understand it, even when it did happen. And this is in this sport. This is our atom bomb. It's the first thing we've had. We've gone through. I mean, I realize that we've gone through everything from an Alabama rig, for example, with Paul Elias, and Paul made that famous. And I'll be honest with you, Andy Potts gave me two of them at a Birmingham deal, and I didn't know what I was doing with them before all that. So,
I was going around the parking lot giving them out, and everybody was going, "Thanks, dude," and putting it in the compartment with the helicopter lure.
That's right. That's what was happening. I got a great story on the helicopter lure too.
We'll circle back to that after we finish this thought.
But anyway, I had 2 of them, and I gave one away to some guy, a friend of mine at the time, which I don't know if he ever threw it or not. He was an older guy, and I put rattle traps on mine, caught a ton of white bass. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what happened. But this is our Big O. We go from the Big O, we go to the lunker lure. You go through all these lure phases over time. Okay, Rick Clunn drawing John Kramer at Wren Lake and learning what a lunker lure was. And Rick Clunn wins an event
on the buzzbait.
Huh?
On the lunker lure buzzbait.
Yeah.
The original rubber on it.
Yeah. An original Big O that, so you look at Fred Young's Big O, and there were a lot of custom baits in Tennessee, but the Big O, we can get into all those stories, but the Big O was the one that made it all happen. And then everybody had to have a Big O. Everybody had to have a lunker lure. Everybody had to have, the next long big bill crankbait. Everybody had to have all this pose. We had to have this. We had to have this. And so those are all trends, and those are changes in trend. And I think that when GPS and side imaging and down imaging and, going through it all, I mean, look at the fish sounding devices, gauges,
Biosonics, which then became
devices.
Yeah.
And so you got all these things that have happened over time that are just phases and trends. I don't think, and this all happened during COVID, don't forget. The popularity of it happened during COVID. So, we really were restricted in a learning curve. And as soon as COVID came out, man, this dude was wide open. You look back at it, you have to tie COVID into the lack of understanding of it, you see. So there wasn't a lot of travel. They were limited in access. People really didn't have that much. And so all of a sudden, we come out of COVID and it's dominant. The end of COVID made it dominant because now we all learned about it. We all were traveling
and had the time to get on the water and mess with it because A, there weren't a lot of tournaments, and B, no one was going to work, and C, the only thing you could do was fish and go to the grocery store. Right.
That's right. You fish, go to the grocery store. But we didn't get the popularity of it until after that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You look at Garmin's numbers, I mean, the growth in what their numbers are, and they've attributed a lot of their segment in this last quarterly report to that actual device.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever it looks at, and certainly fishing's not their biggest avenue, but it was a big part of what fishing did. You look at what they're doing in automotive, and it's still a cash loss phase. So Garmin's made headways and inways with it. No doubt it's been huge for them. I don't want to hurt that, but I do want to see it change, And so I think Bass made a stab at it, eliminating 2 and 3 of them, but I'm not sure that 2 and 3 of them were any better than one. You know, I think guys can still compete with one. I think searching for fish is easier with one off each side of your back boat.
Here's what I think is going to happen, Rick. I'd like to get your opinion on it. This is where we are headed, in my opinion. You've got a bunch of guys that are very talented, that have made a lot of money, and there's no secret. The vast majority of the fish that they catch are because that they of the utilization of electronics. And it's very clear that there's a segment of guys that have spent so much time at it, that understand it, that know how to look at it to where they are better than 99% of the guys who are trying to do the same thing as them. There are a lot of guys floating out there at Raybird, Rick. There's a handful of guys that you knew was going to catch them, and they out-caught everyone. So it's not, it is complete BS to say that just because the only reason you're good is because you have it. There is a subset of anglers, and that is not debatable, that is better with it. There's also, I think, no debate that something has to. So we have 3 organizations right now. This is where we're headed, Rick. This is there's no question. This is where we're headed, and we kind of have it now. But I think it's going to become even more segmented. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, listen, the fact of the matter is no one is thrilled with any current organization right now. Like no one is like, this is the cat's meow.
All of them. Yeah.
So you also have young guys, and we saw this in the Invitational, some guys who turned down either BPT invites or who opted to go to the opens rather than fish one day with, one day without. Some of the top talented young anglers in the country with their technology. There's going to be enough of these guys to where I think you are going to see, as organizations, depending on if they're restricting them and things like that, you're going to have enough of these guys that are going to go, you know what? We're going to have a no holds barred technology arms race FFS tour. And if you want to go flip a jig in it, you more than welcome can. But it's going to be a tour that is no restriction. It's going to pull a lot of the young talent who is restricted or who isn't able to use it or who can't change it. So you're going to have an arms race tour. It's going to pull a lot of the young talent because that's where they can make their money. It's going to be a forward-facing sonar tour. You already got the MPFL, which is no forward-facing sonar. I wish they had gone a step further and not had 360 allowed. I wish it had just been 2D and mapping on the front of the boat.
Benefit. You know, I've run 360 since it came out, and the one thing I will say about it, it can find me a stack of pallets on a flat in the Arkansas River. You know?
Exactly. But if you're going to be like Brad Fuller and you're going to not only double down, but triple and quadruple down on the old school fishing and stuff, then why put the 360 on the front? Why not just say we're going 1997?
Well, and 360, all brands has improved dramatically since it came out, you know.
Correct. You can do a lot of bed fishing with 360.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of stuff.
Everybody's view of side imaging in 360. So you do cut side imaging, which comes back to, do we kill GPS and Loran, you know, and you don't even know what Loran is.
And then I think we're going to have a mix, whether that is a limitation on it, whether that's, like you said, 2 days with, 2 days without, whether that's a 1 period deal, whether that's 1 day with, 1 day without in the final day, whether you get to choose, whether they make a transducer that can only see 50 feet in front of I don't know what that's going to look like in the future. There's all sorts of options.
I'll say this, Matt, that they could do that, and someone could take that mantra and run with that operation, that modus operation. But I think that in doing so, that mode of operation is going to be a little different, because there's one thing that they all have to have. I don't believe that there's enough financial support in this sport to create a fourth set. I don't believe there's really, honestly, and I'm going to say this with all respect to all 3 organizations, enough for 3 good solid strong tours, you know.
Yeah, and I'd say, you know, I think the MPFL, with what they're doing, mad respect, they're not a big section of the endemic sponsorship pie. I mean, that's MLF and Bass. I think they would readily admit that. They're working for it, but
yeah, Marty and I were talking the other day, and Marty, as you know, is a good friend of mine. And last week we were talking. And
Stone, Marty Stone.
Yeah, Marty Stone.
Dude, you need to put the word in for him. I told him when everything went down with MLF on him, I messaged him. I said, Marty, I said, when you're ready, would love to get you on BTL. He said, all right, I'll give it I'll let you know. Heck, it's been a year and a half.
Yeah, he's not ready yet. I'll tell you that.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll wait another year.
Yeah, he's not ready yet. He's getting close. So, and Rob Newell's book helped him a little bit. So, but anyway, I've got mixed opinions on that too. But the history of sport started before me. It really started in the 60s. And so when you look at the 60s of this sport forming a pro sport tour, there's one thing everybody forgets about. And what Bass wants to say is the strength of the shield. Okay, we went to the year after Knoxville, when we went to a classic, it was lights out, wasn't it, Matt?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, lights out. 2020, go to Birmingham. Year before COVID, last event before COVID of a major event, period, in the country.
Yep.
And we had a lights out classic at Birmingham.
Yeah, that was great. I remember that.
And who was there?
I mean, that last classic in 2020 was all of the new Elite Series thing. Like there was no BPT guys in that
2019, one.
That was the last class. We actually did the 47th classic. Yeah, we did a documentary Jeffries did of the 19 one. It was, like the last KVD, like all those guys that were fishing it.
Yeah, 2019, 2020, 2021, we go to Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got this thing, which Hank Cherry won 2 of those, right?
Yep.
So here you go, and Hank's a great guy, man. Him, great family man. Jacqueline, good people. But anyway, another story on that whole deal. We want to talk about the strength of the Bass Shield. Everybody overlooks what really the strength is. And that's what all of this revolves around. What is the strength?
The strength of the Bass Shield to me is the history and integrity.
Strength of any of it is the number of members they have.
Okay.
And so you look at FLW, at the time, Bass got to be at one point about 640,000 members. In its best day, FLW probably wasn't 40,000.
Yeah,
you put all the media up you want. Those are people paying for a magazine, paying for a membership.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument today on whatever the number is, I don't care if you want to look at Motor Trend distributing 230,000 publications, okay? Motor Trend and magazines, we all know they're going away. That's the strength of Motor Trend. It's the same for Bass. It's that strength of people that are willing to pay to have the publication, to be a member, that are willing to put it out there, life members. I mean, golly, Bass probably got as many life members as any of these organizations.
I've been a life member since I was 13.
Yeah.
Look, what? I got my life member certificate right there.
For MLF?
No, for Bass.
Oh, Bass. There you go. You're a life member.
No, I've wanted to throw that thing across the room like a Frisbee a couple times in the past 12 months, but it's still up there. I'm still damn proud of it, Rick.
But you're a part of it's what I'm saying. And that's why you're here. You're passionate about it. And those members are passionate about it. And so that's the strength of what is Bass. And that's the strength of what is the Bass Shield. It's really not Bass. It's really not the Shield. It's really not the anglers. You put whoever you want on that tour. And I think they're all great guys. You can bring Kevin Van Dam back to Bass. It doesn't matter. The strength of Bass is that membership base.
That's a great point, because I think MLF, I venture to say no. In my opinion, hypothetically, MLF was counting on taking the talent out of Bass, which would then shrink Bass, which would leave them powerless. But as long as what you just said, Rick, that the strength was in the membership, not in the anglers, that's what they miscalculated, and Bassmaster bounced back. Dude, is that the OG article?
That is the original Bassmaster.
Like the first Bassmaster.
That's it.
You know what? I feel like with what I've got in the studio, I need to start getting on eBay and finding one of those bad boys. There can't be that many in existence.
I have virtually all of them. I have about 3 of them I'm missing.
Who's on the cover of the first Bassmaster? That's a great trivia question. Do you know who that is?
Blake Honeycutt, I thought, but I don't remember. I'm not going to take it out.
Yeah, don't take it out, Rick. The last thing I want to hear is paper ripping.
That's a good question. I hadn't even thought about that.
It's the strength of the members. You're right. They literally took 80% of the household names, and Bass came back. And Bass came back just as strong afterwards.
And they built new names.
The people still showed up.
This is my Randall Thorpe.
The tournament still happened.
I apologize to Randall, dude. I apologize to Randall Thorpe. I didn't really know Randall Thorpe. Didn't follow Randall Thorpe. I should have, but I really wouldn't care about FLW because Irwin Jacobs didn't care about me.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I didn't care about FLW. And I mean, that's just the way it was. It did not sell any Bass Cat boats because his whole mission was to sell one thing: Ranger bass boats.
Mm-hmm.
All of FLW was focused on selling Ranger bass boats. And so that whole thing took it away from me even caring about it. And then when you look at it, what Bass did is take a few former FLW guys and made them stars overnight. Not overnight, but pretty much overnight.
Wormhole. That would be the first Bassmaster magazine. That would be Jimmy Holt.
Jimmy Holt, yeah, that's right.
Jimmy Holt passed away here. There's an article here in 2018 at the age of 86. There's that magazine cover. And it said Jimmy Holt would have been. He was the fishing editor at the Nashville Tennessean.
Yeah, I should have known that, Matt. I'd forgotten.
No, I didn't know. That's some really good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, Battisti does a good job with all that, and Pete Robbins and those guys, and they're wonderful guys. I met Battisti when he was working in Idaho, and a California boy at heart.
This is what Bill Dance said about him. Jimmy was a tremendous fisherman. I remember he participated in that very first tournament we had on Beaver Lake. I believe he weighed the smallest stringer of bass that's ever been weighed in a bass tournament, but he really was an excellent, excellent fisherman.
Yeah, everybody has a bad event. Nobody's going to have a worse one than I drove into 2 weeks ago,
Dude, did you hey, we all goose egg. Did you see Kyle Patrick's video? I felt so bad for the guy after day 2 of Florida. He went out. He's like, the guy's driving. He's like, everyone's going to want to know why I didn't weigh in. He's like, I just didn't catch any. He's like, I just had never. I think every single person that is watching this and done this has gone out and not caught a bass.
I've got a couple of good events and a couple of events that people thought I should have won. The best event, the one I probably should have won at. There's 2 of them I probably should have won, and it just didn't string up. One of them wasn't going to string up for different reasons, and that was the Texoma event that I did well in. The other one I was in second the first day. And so the other one that strings up that I should have won was an Okeechobee event that Roland Martin won. And I had 1 pound the first day. And I went through that event catching them on spinnerbait. Now, there's a reason I only had 1 pound first day, but that was that old draw, head-to-head draw story. You drew somebody that won fish the other end of the lake. And so that's hard at Okeechobee, and wind blowing a little. But between that event was good. And when we came out of that event, and I'll never forget, I walked out of there with a good boy named Stacy King.
I've heard of him.
Yep. And he is in the Hall of Fame. And I looked at the results of that tournament, and I believe it's the only event I ever remember this happening, and I'm sure it's happened before, but Stacey King went 3 days without a fish. And I'm catching them on a spinnerbait, and I know Stacey King can catch them on a spinnerbait. And we went 3 days, and Stacey came through 3 days of 0. And those events happen. And so, Kyle, put it in your pocket and go on, That was a good guy. I gave at the MPAA 3 years ago. Have I told you this? I don't know if I have or not.
No.
I pick up pennies. I've got this habit. I pick up pennies in a parking lot.
Okay.
And so I keep them in my pocket. And I carry them.
Just random pennies. Like if you're at Walmart and you see a penny on the ground, you pick it up and then it just stays with you. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it's been in a parking lot for a while.
It's been in my pocket for a while.
How long?
Enough that Lincoln's head's polished. But it's been in there a long time. I mean, it's actually, you can see the top of his head. I don't know if I can get his head up there. You can see it's kind of polished. Well,
yeah,
there you go. And that's from carrying it in your pocket. But I gave that to Kyle Patrick, gave one of my pocket pennies. When I get another one, I give one to you, Matt, for good luck.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so Kyle Patrick carried one of those his whole first tour.
He's good dude. He's good for the sport.
He's a good guy.
A lot of,
And he's one that thought out of this box on sponsorship and things too.
Yep.
I want to delve back into these outdoor summit numbers and your youth and forward-facing sonar thing. I know that there's going to be a compromise. I don't know what that compromise is. I feel like MPFL's got a good stage. Matt needs all the help he can get. There you go.
Yeah. Tech 19 always gives me a hard time, but yeah, I will not turn down a lucky penny.
I'll find you one. I've got
the lucky Mardi Gras fish beads in the boat. I got the lucky boxers. I got the lucky hat. I have the lucky fishy 5 to start the day.
Hey, we'll tape a penny on the console. How's that?
Tape a penny. Now I've definitely toned it down. It used to be a lot more. And come to think of it, I think I caught him better when I had like 35 minutes of rituals before each open day. But anyway,
yeah,
maybe it'll be the gateway drug back into diving into superstitions throughout the day.
Well,
back to the young guys. Sorry, we always get you off on.
We're going to straggle down the road, and I don't know where we're at, but there's going to be a compromise we don't have on this forward-facing thing. But it's important we have that compromise because we do have to keep the older anglers and the younger anglers in. Now, bass can do whatever; they can create their own heroes. That's my whole point.
Mm-hmm.
They can do whatever they want to do. It's going to work. There's going to be a number of it working, and they've got to figure out the matrix. But they cannot lose in what they do. That fan base, those people that are what makes the Bass Shield. Yep. If you're a bass, you want to say it's the strength of the shield. If you're Bass Cat Boats, I know what the strength is, Matt. It's a 94% loyalty. And what is that loyalty? Their customers. It isn't Bass Cat Boats that's strong. We build a great product. We try hard. I know we use better materials than anybody in this business. So that's what we know. Mm-hmm. But without all that, there's one thing that makes it strong. That's that 94% loyalty, that their last boat's going to be a Bass Cat. They're going to buy another Bass Cat, and they're going to keep owning a Bass Cat boat. And so that strength is what makes this company. And it's not Bass Cat Boats. It's what we've done to earn that loyalty. It's what Bass has done to earn that loyalty. And so if you walk away from that loyalty, then you walk away from your business core value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks, Pete. And so that core value is something, and I wrote about it in the brochure this year. It started about 81, 82 when I sat Dad down in this office at the time, and I said, man, we got to quit doing what we're doing. He said, what? I said, we got to change the way we do things. And he said, why? What do you do? I said, Dad, what do we do? And of course, the first answer, and this actually came up at a conference yesterday. The first answer is we build boats, right? And we build great boats, Dad. but so do all these other people. They build what people think is great boats. It's a matter of their opinion versus ours. And so in 81, 82, we didn't have the best product line, but we worked on that. But not only is it a product line, it's the people. And we started in 81, 82 focusing on those people. And that's what made it. And if Bass will focus on those people, just like your plaque on your wall, if they focus on you, I think it was a shame, Matt, that the life member pre-night changed. I think we should have a social with anglers the night before every classic with life members there.
They used to have that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You start on Friday, but every Thursday night before a classic was a social hour with all the anglers. 2 hours.
And life members of Bass. So like you didn't have to be in there or anything. It's like just everybody.
Life members and families.
Really? I didn't know that.
I think it was a.
When did they stop doing that?
Yeah, they quit doing that. It was a financial decision. It was ESPN. It was a lot of things, somebody to host it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the strength of the sport is in the tightest value you have to what is the membership base. And the tightest value is the guys that paid their money to be life members, you and I. And beyond our position in the industry, it's that, you're a Bass member.
Yep.
And if they value that relationship, and I don't know if Chase is listening or not, but I think it's important,
I agree. I mean, I've said this before. I got the Bass Boss book right there from Ray Scott. I got the Churchill fish whistle right there. I've got the life, but like it's part of it, and that's nothing against. I mean, I've got it. I got an FLW second place trophy that I'm still bitter that Justin waited till the last to beat me by 4 ounces. He could have just weighed in earlier instead of letting me. I mean, that was 20.
You don't have a red man spittoon though.
No, I started after. But I mean, dude, like the guy could have weighed in a little earlier and not let me think he won it. He sat there and watched me weigh in and then, knew that he had me by a couple ounces. And I was like, my God, I won my first BFL. And then it's like 21-8. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, sorry. I knew I had that one. Waited till the last
all been there, Matt.
But I've got, I got some Jordan Lee live well water. It's in the people. It's in the membership.
You've seen my trivia wall up here.
Yeah, you got a lot of cool stuff.
I ran the camera over it one day. We had Mark Jeffries roast.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got all kinds of history on the wall up here, and you know that. I mean, right behind me is the WCF poster. That's actually the signed autographed poster of a WCF event, the old WCFs.
That's the boat maneuvering.
Yeah, that's a boat
fishing
tournament, boat driving skills and fishing tournament, and it's signed by all the competitors. So I mean, it's a part of what the sport is building that, and there's no doubt we also have a change that I want to recognize too, and that is the younger anglers. That part of the sport, that history of that live well water, that history of the Bass Boss, the fact that you're a life member, that's a part of the sport we need the younger anglers to understand. And that's part of you being on that committee of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame and that effort of the Hall of Fame to get that out in front of them. And everybody should go to the Hall of Fame, go to Wonders of Wildlife, go see Johnny's facility, and go to what he's given us a huge opportunity to have a Hall of Fame. And everybody should go see, live, understand, see the picture of Basil Bacon in the old boat. Look at Jimmy Houston in the old days. And who was Glenn Powell?
Do you think that the Elite Series rookies...
John Powell. Yeah.
Do you think when the Elite Series rookies make the Elite Series, they should have a weekend where they all get together, they go to Bass headquarters, they have a day of history, they go tour the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, they have, it's like a 2.5, 3 day deal to say, you represent the 500,000 Bass members, and that would lead potentially to a better understanding on the water and of them representing that shield?
That's a tough one. I agree with that to some degree, but I also realize that these young rookies are coming out without a lot of money. and to take a day or a week or 2 days or 3 days and put them in.
Yeah, no, Bass covers it. Bass covers it. They're not out of sight.
Somebody has to cover it. There's a cost.
Yeah.
And so the cost is there, but I think it's important that NASCAR fans know who Red Farmer is and who Lee Petty is. And I think it'd be great if we could do that and do it financially at their level. I don't want to tax them. I'm just going to say that. I mean, I think they should know it anyway, but I don't want to tax them. Anybody that hasn't been on the Bass Fishing Archive should spend time learning there. But they don't really do that today. But I think the history of the sport's a part we're missing in that youth. I think the history of sports, part of this whole forward-facing sonar conversation, to be honest. It's really a small part of it, but it is a part of it. And so they don't have that history of the sport. They don't even know that Rick Clunn learned about a lunker lure in an event, They don't know that. And so I think those are things that, a part of it doesn't need to be learned. It's just a part of the sport. But, knowing who Sam Snead was in golf, I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that they built a Persimmon Wood,
I want to put a bow on this by asking you a final question. Yeah, I don't know if it's an answerable question, Rick, but if anyone can answer it, you can. We kind of beat around the bush with this a lot. A lot of unrest at the top level of professional fishing. A lot of angst and anger towards organizations from anglers that leaks out into the public. That's behind the scenes. I can't tell you how many texts I said that so-and-so, this is a mess, or when is it going to end? I want to ask you this. Will we get back to a point, or what has to happen to get back to the point where the biggest controversy in fishing over the entire year is whether Ike is part of the community or not, where it's like you know what I'm saying? Like I covered this thing for years and years. And like, who did I text yesterday? I was like,
Marty said he was going to be my therapist when we signed Ike up.
Here's but you see what I'm saying? Like, that's what the stuff was all about. It was about the stuff that was on the tournament. Like, I remember one time, like the biggest controversy during the year was like, Kevin Van Dam. There was like a picture of him, and he had turned his engine on and didn't have his life jacket buckled. And it was like, what's going to happen? Like, that was the big controversy for like the entire year. What is it going to take to get back to have the years of fishing, Rick, to where we're not focused on outside influences, other things like that, and it's all about the tournament? Like BTO, we would have, weeks that would just cover what happened in the tournament, not off the water.
Well, we had another topic that we were going to go into, and that's good, because you're kind of giving us a segue to it. And we were going to talk about it, and we talked about it on the phone a little bit, but we really didn't talk about much because you didn't want to talk about much. So I'm going to segue a little, and I think and I said this, and you said save it, but you've said save it 3 or 4 times or more. But anyway, I think the biggest controversy we got is whether or not anyone, and I said anyone, cannot violate a Bassmaster rule. I mean, at times I have. I mean, it's just like I had my youngest son lives on K Lake, and while we're talking, dude, I got a text from Brad Kell. You know who Brad Kell is?
No.
He just found out I'm fishing K Lake. I didn't get any info out of Brad. There's the text.
Mm-hmm.
But he just didn't know I was fishing K Lake. Of course, it's a no info rule. He just said good luck.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is Brad didn't know I was fishing K Lake because I never called him.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Kell's about as good a stick on K Lake as there is. And so, I mean, how do you not violate those rules? Because they're going to say something. And we got to get away from that. I think there's violations that exist. I think they're valid. I think you should have them. Bass let somebody back in. I won't mention their name, but I oppose this. They let somebody back in to fish that I don't agree with. I watched that man do what he did. I was there. It was flagrant. I didn't even realize it because it was happening in front of me. It was flagrant what he did. I was there, and somebody came up to me, did you see what so-and-so did? Well, the people today weren't there then. They don't realize how flagrant it was. He should never fish a Bassmaster event again. And I'm not going to say who it is, but he's in again. And so those things have to be treasured. They have to be protected. So there's violations that need to be protected. Once you do that, you should never be back. But there are violations that don't need, that we need to figure out the right template, And, I didn't even know what that guy did till the end of the day. A couple of guys came up, they saw me there, and I said, I didn't know what was going on. I just saw it happen, And once I saw it happen, I'm like, yeah, that happened. And so, I watched it. But
this goes back to the phrase, Rick. What you're saying is you have to use the term, was this done to quote, and this has exactly how it has to be worded. It has to be worded like this: to gain an unfair competitive advantage.
Absolutely. That's it. Was it done? And I said this to you the other day, and that's when you said save it. Well, I did say one thing. My son lives in Kentucky Lake, lives at Mayfield, Kentucky. He has been shown a few things by a few people. And he bumped up and said, oh, I didn't know you're fishing. Dad, I got to tell you. No, you don't tell me anything.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't tell me anything, son. Well, but I know, no, stop. I have no information. Well, when does it end? Or when can you talk? I said, I can't talk from the time they release the schedule. I'm done. Once I pay my money, I'm done. And so, no, my son, I was going to stay with him. I'm not staying with him now. But I was going to stay with him a couple of days. He lives 30 minutes from a ramp. So, the information rule, I don't believe very many people can actually, is it with intent is the question, Matt?
That's what I'm saying. Intent? To gain an unfair competitive advantage.
Yes. Was there an intent? And I think that's a tough one to regulate because, intent could be, and I'll go down this path, looking to see how many pegs got pulled at a tackle store.
Yeah.
That's intent, Matt.
But that's also public information.
It is public information, but you had the intent. Maybe you're smarter than everybody else. Give you credit on that. You look to see which pegs got sold.
You could be like Rojas, who back in the elites, like let's say he was catching them on a parrot colored DT10. He would literally, as soon as he got him, get off the water and go to every single store within the area. Now this was back before you could do the overnight, like shipping, 2008, 2009, and buy every single one of them off the store. Go ask, do you have any more? Make sure that they didn't, and make sure that no one else could get that crankbait for the whole rest of the week.
Yeah, there were a lot of guys sent their wife to the local tackle store and had it mailed to them when we were on tour,
But this wasn't like, he had enough. This was just so no one else could have it.
Oh yeah, yeah. But there were a lot of guys did that. It wasn't. Rojas didn't create that. It was done before Rojas.
Yeah, gain an unfair competitive advantage.
That event at Okeechobee with Steve Daniels. The only place that had the spinnerbait I was throwing, was Roland Martin Marina. The only one. And I walked in at Rojas, and it was one of Bernie's baits. But anyway, I walked in with Steve. I drew Steve Daniels the last day there. Steve Daniels had 2 days without a fish, and guides on the lake.
Yeah.
And so Steve looks at me. He says, "Well, obviously you're catching more fish than I am, so I'm going with you." He said, "What do I need to do?" I said, "Well, there's 2 spinnerbaits." I knew how many spinnerbaits were on Roland's wall. I said, "There's 2 spinnerbaits on that wall. You need to go buy both of them." "Oh, I got spinnerbaits." I said, "Well, if you don't buy them, I'm buying them, so somebody else doesn't get them. But I'm telling you, Steve, there's 2 baits on that wall that'll catch them." So, and Steve would tell you this story, and he had his own podcast. He's tried to get me on it. I hadn't had time. But Steve walked in and looked, and he said, "It's a spinnerbait." And so I walked in and bought the spinnerbaits, There's now none of them at Okeechobee. And Steve turns around, and he doesn't have the bait. And it's like 1 o'clock, 12:30. I don't know. I've had a limit. I'm calling. And I reach up and grab his bait midair. stop it in a cast. And I snap it off and tie on one of those spinner baits with the Hildebrand. And I tie on one of those spinner baits. He says, that won't make any difference. They'll bite this one. Well, how many you got in the boat, Steve? He makes 2 casts. On his first cast, I said, no, you're not working it right. And on his second cast, he works it right and he catches one. And he proceeds to catch, I think that day, 2 or 3 or 4 fish. And I mean, it was just the thing. And so, yeah, it happens today. People buy all the baits off a rack, still do.
Dude, that's a great name. I hadn't thought of, I think Steve Daniel, I don't have that pulled up. Did he win the first Forest Wood Cup ever?
I think so. Yeah.
I think he might have won it. So what? This is funny. So I did not know that he was doing a Okeechobee. He's the voice of Okeechobee on YouTube right here.
You didn't know he had a podcast?
I didn't know he had a show. I mean, he put stuff out like every day. But what I remember from Steve Daniel is he would stay in a trailer, smaller stature dude, and had a lot of cats. Like I remember had a lot of cats stayed in the trailer. And the funny thing is, like, I pull up some of his videos, and one of them is titled "Feral Cats Make the Best Pets," and it's. I'm
He's on a podcast down there. Steve still guides, I think.
Yeah, no, he was always super cool. I always liked him. There he is, right there with his wife with the feral cat. So I was right. He did. He's a cat guy.
Debbie and Steve, yeah, the good people, man. Good people.
Yeah.
And,
I'll have to check that out afterwards.
You got a whole host of them down there, old pros. Tom Mann's down there. I got a text from Greg Seamus the other day, and he said Tom said say hi, and he'd taken a guide trip with Tom, and then Chester's down there. Chet Dowdett, I love Chester. Chester's good. Nobody calls him Chester. I call him Chester. Some of the guys called him Chester.
He's flexing. He wants people to know. There it is, right there. There's the banner. 1996 FLW champion. He's not letting people forget that. And then I also did not know that he was on the Raisin Brand box. Look at that in the top corner. I need that Raisin Brand box. I got the Denny Wheaties.
Yeah, you need the box, don't you?
I might have to reach out to Steve and get him on BTL.
He's a good guy, man. He's just doing his thing.
Yeah.
But it's more of a local show down there than anything. A few of the guys follow him, the older guys follow him, but Steve's a good guy. But that was a good one. So, yes, I understand. What's the difference in information becomes the reason of the conversation. And, today it's so easy. I mean, you can be on the water, Matt, and I know this has happened to you. A guy's catching him, looks up, and he says, yeah, I've been catching them on this.
Yep.
You haven't got time to stop him. Now, it wasn't intent, but what if it was the right thing? And what if you used it? And what if you were going to use it, and now you don't feel like you can?
To gain an unfair competitive advantage, I would use it if I knew in my heart that that's where I was going and that's what I was going to use. But if it influenced my decision to where the only reason I was using that or went there or did what that was because that guy said something to me, now I have gained an unfair competitive advantage.
Yeah. How do you know that you would not have migrated to that bait during the process of your elimination?
Yeah.
There is no way to know.
I mean, I've talked to guys that, there's stories of guys who at Bassmaster Classics or at the gas station, and a guy just walks up and goes, this will be one on XX bait in XX Creek. And they go, what the hell? And they've literally called the tournament director and been like, dude, I just got like verbal vomit of what to do. Like, what do you do? And in that case, they said, if that was your intent and you were going to do that there, you will be fine. But if that influenced your decision, which then that changed the whole outcome. I mean, it's an impossible to answer question, Rick, because like you said, like maybe X happens, which happens, which leads to Y, which ultimately leads to Z. But now your alphabet ends at Y because the guy gave you Z. It's a 6 one way, half dozen the other.
Well, I can go down to what sits in the back of your mind when you see people fishing around you and what happens and what's said. And I mean, even at Rayburn, I had something happen that was controversial. I didn't take advantage of it. Probably should have in some degree because I was going to migrate there anyway. But, I certainly didn't do well at Rayburn, and I won't play and say that's why my reason for failure is because I failed because I caught the heck out of them the first day of practice.
Mm-hmm.
And they gone. And I kept trying to force feed them. And I caught them all over, not just one spot. I mean, I caught them all over Rayburn the first day of practice. But certain area, certain way, but they didn't. I've tried to continue to force feed them, and that didn't work. But the thing is, would that have migrated my decision, knowing what I probably should have done, could have done type thing? No, I wasn't going to forward facing. I'd already eliminated that because everybody else was doing it. But, you never know where your mind's going to take you. And if it keeps you from going that direction, it's unfair to you, Matt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfair to you as an angler because now you've eliminated that in your mind. Oh, that guy told me about that. You can't do that. You just can't do that.
And completely legally, I know that there are some guys that like to bounce ideas off of each other inside. So like, you're both fishing the event and you do it. But I mean, that does the same thing too. That's why there's some guys that are complete loners that don't want to talk to anyone else, that want to put in at a boat ramp and not see anybody else. I've benefited from this. It's also hurt me. I'm sure I've hurt guys that I've been staying with, and I've helped them in some circumstances because once you have information, it impacts your decision. Me and Andrew Upshaw or whoever, we're staying together. We share information. It's 100% legal, right? Because we're in the boat tournament. But whatever we tell each other is going to impact the decisions that we make. Our tournament would not have been the same had we not given any sort of tidbit information, nothing to each other. I go back and forth on that. Like, I feel that's why a lot of the top anglers, Rick, mentally strong, like that, the KVDs, you talk about a Brandon Polinick, throw a Mark Davis in there, guys like that. They have conviction in what they're doing and they're able to separate when the rubber meets the road. They're able to do what they have 100% conviction in.
Mark didn't get much help. He really, I mean, Mark's career, he tried not to get a lot of help because it usually messes you up. And, I first met Stephen Browning, a guy named Fred Frazier connected us. Stephen was young, and I was fishing Dumas, and he said, this young man knows it. So Stephen came over to the hotel room, sat down, went through it all with me, came down, visited. It was legal, not illegal, but it changed the way I fished the event. Probably hurt me. Matter of fact, I know it hurt me. I mean, I fished the event well, but I didn't focus on what I should have and realize how good what I had was because of the help that Stephen had gotten. And I got a lot of help at Dumas event. Doc gave me some help. And Doc did give me the help that should have won the event, but it wasn't a bass event. It was a federation event. And we did go to a bass event at Truman the next week. That was a deadhead, man. I finished up at Dumas, Arkansas, and drove to Truman. That was overnight to be at practice tomorrow.
You know what I'm doing the day before Norfolk practice starts?
Tell me.
I'm fishing Crappie Fest on Lake Fork.
So you'll come up. You got you a place at Norfolk?
We did not have a place at Norfolk yet. It would be, there's 4 of us that are staying there. I'm rooming with Blake Schroeder, who lives down there in Texas. Really good dude. He's won 3 BFLs. He's one of those guys who doesn't know how good he is yet, because this is only his second year in the Opens, but very naturally talented angler. And then Matt Steffen, Miles Berghoff, and myself. We can talk off air if you think there's
there's good stuff around. Okay. Verbo's around it too. There's not much out there by the lake where that's at, but there's some around.
Yep.
We'll take that down the road differently. Yep. But no, interesting conversation on information. I think it's very hard for anybody to comply with Bass's rule if you really want to go to it. And I think the intent, there's just too much information shared that people don't. And I think it's any group,
Has this been from the beginning, like back when you first got in? I mean, info has always been a source of discussion since
people that got
dawn of tournament fishing.
I know people that got info that would shock you, that you wouldn't think got info. And I know it was illegal. Did they self-report? No, they did not. I know people that were sharing info. I know people have been protested. And I mean, you go back, this is not new. This is not new. This has been happening forever. And so how do you regulate it? I mean, it's been happening since the info rules came out, you know. So I think how do you regulate it becomes the question, and what do we need to do? Do we want to kill it all? No, we don't want to kill it all. We don't want everybody to have free info, because there are info like Bitters Rocks, you know. Bitters Rocks are Frankie's rocks. Frankie Epauletti had those rocks. He put some of those rocks on that pile. He found the pile. He made the pile bigger. And he kept making the pile bigger. And he kept making the pile bigger. And Jim Bitter, they're named Bitters Rocks now. They're not named Frankie's Rocks. And so that's where those fish went to, out of that creek on tidal water. And so Frankie's Rocks are now Bitters Rocks. And yes, Jim Bitter did get them from Frankie. Not saying anything bad about Jim.
Yeah.
Not saying wasn't an illegal thing at all.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't illegal. It's just, hey, I need some help.
Yeah.
And here's the best stuff I got. And at the time, Frank was probably the best on the Potomac, one of the best.
Lincoln says this. He says, I'll mark my Navionics community edits to avoid them. Probably the funniest thing that's going on right now, Rick, is people are going on the community edits on Navionics, and then you click on it. There's like information here. It'll be like, Angler X screamed at me for fishing his spot right here in 28. I mean, there are some hilarious community edits all over the country right now.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. That's not something I do. So yeah, you're in tune with it. Yeah,
it's pretty funny. It's all the tech kids, Rick. It's all the tech kids that are in there.
Yeah.
We did
pull up your Navionics and there's a comment from somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I normally run 7, 8, 9 commercials during the show. If any of the sponsors have an issue with me not running them today, feel free to contact me. I thought it flowed really well for an hour and 50 minutes, and I didn't want to interrupt it, Rick.
Well, I mean, I never even thought about the commercials taking a break. I could have probably used one there, Matt. So that's okay.
it was fantastic. It flowed. I think we covered a lot. I'm going to let you go. Yeah, your phone's going off. You got work to attend to.
No, this is everybody. Hey, you're on the show. Or
yeah, but I greatly appreciate it. Always enjoy it. Try to get you on a couple times of the year. And it's a really good perspective.
That's actually my iPad. I didn't turn my iPad off.
Yeah. So I've never had an iPad in my life, and I'm doing some stuff on day 4 with Frank Scalish where we're using the Deep Dive app. That it involves a bunch of technology, but basically we've got it to where we can draw on mapping and it shows up on the show. So that, I got an iPad so I can do that on my end too. So it's kind of like the 16-inch Garmin screen. I wish I'd had it 5 years ago. I'm not sure why I never did.
I've had them since they came out, and they are one handy piece of equipment. It doesn't do what a laptop or a PC will do, but it's really a handy piece of equipment. And I just hope we got a show everybody enjoyed, Matt. And I mean, I'm sorry we didn't get your commercials in.
No, I said I didn't. Hey, close the show with this. Thank you, Bobby. I wrote it down and then I ran out of notes and turned the page.
Helicopter lure story.
Close it out with the old helicopter lure story, Rick.
So Galen Poe, nobody probably in most parts of the country knows who Galen Poe was. He was an employee of Braniff Airlines. They retired and had Bowles Landing on Lakeport. And Galen's claim to fame is he was the guy with Mark Stevenson when he caught Ethel. Galen missed Ethel twice, and they were fishing together. It was just Galen. You hear it's a guide trip. Well, it was Galen and Mark fishing together. Hey, let's go. I don't have a trip. So they were together. I think there were 3 of them in the boat that day. And Galen's flipping, and he misses Ethel. And Mark says, hey, if you're not catching, you mind if I fish in there? I'll go ahead. I can't catch it. He flips in there, and Mark catches Ethel, which is the most famous fish probably the most famous fish next to the world record,
Mm-hmm.
And the one out of Japan. But and Dot out of California.
Yeah.
but those are the famous fish stories. But
Ethel
anyway,
was the
Galen's
fish that
got-
was in the Bass Pro Tank for years, right?
Ethel was, well, they did stuffed Ethel, sold Ethel. Johnny contracted it. And
They had a
Martha
funeral
sponsored-
for Ethel.
Pardon?
Didn't they have a funeral for Ethel?
They had a funeral for Ethel. They had it all,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, long story short, just a little backstory. So,
Yeah,
all
but
right,
anyway,
continue.
that's another story. But anyway, that was where Galen's claim to fame was. But he actually guided, and he had a father and son, and the son said, "Hey, do you mind if he's fishing a helicopter lure?" Galen says, "Ah, you're not catching nothing on that. Not catching nothing on that." So they're going along. They're not catching them, and finally the kid says, "Mr. Galen, you mind if I fish that helicopter lure?" "Yeah, go ahead. We're not catching anything." Well, the young man catches one about 2 pounds on a helicopter lure. Pretty soon he catches another one. Pretty soon he catches another one. And pretty soon the dad looks up and says, "Mr. Galen, do you mind if I use one of them helicopter lures?" And they turn around and the dad starts catching them. So now the dad and the son are catching them in the back of Galen's boat. And Galen looks back, son, he says, "Son, do you happen to have another one of them helicopter lures?"
Dr. Juice.
Yeah. Roland sold a ton of helicopter lures.
He did. I wonder
Fred Ward, Roland Martin.
what happens if you call that number.
I have no idea.
Well, guess what we're going to do?
You're going to get something else. Now we're doing the helicopter lure commercial.
372 88
VR 549, man.
1-800-372-8888. All right. This is the helicopter lure from 1994.
Thank you for calling. Your call is very important to us and will be answered in the order it was received.
I think we're kind of stuck in this now, aren't we? What do you think this is? I didn't think it would actually go through.
I figured somebody had their number. Who knows what it is?
If it's the
American Airlines won't know what the
lure-
flight is.
if it's the helicopter lure, I will eat my flip flop.
Oh no, I've got to look it up now.
How long do we do this?
We're going to see what the helicopter lure number is here, man.
It's 1-800-372-8888. Hopefully this isn't like a copyright song. How to cast and catch with your helicopter lure.
That is Goldwater Law Firm TV commercial for accidents.
Oh, well, that
Wow.
just took all the mystery out of it.
In '92, it was the Janesville Gazette newspaper archive.
I'm going to give it about 20 more seconds.
It shows up as Goldwater Law Firm to me. I don't know.
All right, well, we gave it a minute and a half. That was my maximum.
So
I was going to try to order two.
Do all the stuff, man.
I was going to try to order two. I
Order
wonder
two
how many
helicopter
people
lures.
call that number.
Amazon, eBay, maybe.
I wonder how many people call that number.
Yeah, I doubt. Well, they still run that ad every now and then, but I don't think it's the same ad. But every now and then you'll see that on some archive,
I will tell you, you know what? I'll give the juice up. I don't care. I sent a message to the guy running the Banjo Minnow now. The guy who brought it back in 2022. I want to get him on the show. I want to talk about it. The jig head minnow, hottest technique. The minnow, the hottest technique. The sluggo, the fluke, all of that. Like I want the dude in the infomercial from the Banjo Minnow to come on BTO and talk about the history of the bait and stuff. He runs he's got like all sorts of inspirational stuff and infomercial stuff. But I reached out to him. Long shot. I know it's a long shot, but
Well, maybe you'll get something that you can bring in and talk about something different,
Yep.
I mean, that'd be a unique deal. Talk about the history of the Banjo Minnow.
That's what I was going to go with.
Yeah.
I think they should bring the flying lure back. That thing was phenomenal.
All right, man. Dude, we hid cream scoundrels for years.
How would you fish the cream scoundrel?
Oh, we all fished at Wacky Worm, and we hid it for years.
So you were wacky worming with spinning rods like in the 80s.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Why do you think a Burt fluorescent orange worm got popular on Ouachita? That whole deal started on Ouachita.
Nothing's new. Everything's like style. Like you watch the kids now and you're like, wait a second, that's what I was wearing in high school.
Yeah.
Everything's
coming back, man.
Yeah. Everything's the same. Yeah. Everything's the short
one
shorts.
Thing I hadn't seen come back is white T-shirts and cuff jeans from the 50s. That'll be next.
Just wait. It'll come back.
It'll come back. Yeah.
All right, Rick, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate it. I think we covered a heck of a lot. I enjoyed the hell out of it, and it was a fun, quick 2 hours.
Thanks for the show, bud. We'll talk later. If you need a place at Norfolk, we'll dig something up.
All right. See you there. I'll see you at Kentucky.
Yeah, I'll see you next week.
All right, there it is. All right. Rick Pierce. Man, I was really hoping to close that show out by ordering a couple helicopter lures, but really good show tomorrow. Frank Scalish live. And then I head to Kentucky Lake. I'm going to have a mix of recorded shows. Got some really cool shows coming from some other people in the industry. Just a wealth of knowledge there with Rick. So if you guys are going to be at the Classic in Fort Worth, highly recommend stopping by Bass Cat booth and get your peepers on some cool vessels that will be there. So, all right, this has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. Same place, same time tomorrow. We'll talk to everyone then. See ya.